600 years ago, in some corner of the planet, there still existed an animal capable of tearing your head off with a single bite. And it wasn't the only one. There were prehistoric creatures that were on the verge of making it to our days. Some lived while man was already building empires. Others disappeared by such a small margin that it's terrifying. Because if any of them had survived just a little longer, humanity as we know it today simply wouldn't exist. These are the prehistoric creatures that almost survived until our era. And had they done so, they would have pushed all of humanity to the brink. Number 5. Just 600 years ago, there existed an eagle capable of killing an adult human being with a single blow. We are not talking about remote prehistory. We are talking about an era when Europe already had universities, when the printing press already existed, when the modern world was beginning to take shape. And in New Zealand, this was soaring over the forests. It was called Haast's eagle, and it was the largest raptor that has ever existed on Earth. A 3-meter wingspan, a compact and muscular body designed to fly between trees at high speed, and talons the size of a modern tiger's claws, capable of piercing bone with a single impact. Its usual prey was the moa, a land bird weighing up to 250 kilograms. But when the first humans arrived in New Zealand, the eagle made no distinction. Scientists found the exact same claw marks on Maori skeletal remains that it left on its prey. It hunted us, actively, and it was on the verge of continuing to do so until today. When the Maori arrived in New Zealand, they hunted the moa to extinction. Without its main prey, the eagle collapsed. A single human decision in a single corner of the world was what separated this creature from continuing to exist in our days. If Haast's eagle had survived, New Zealand would be a practically uninhabitable territory today. An aerial predator of that scale, which had already proven to hunt humans, attacking in a dive from the heights without warning, making no noise, giving no time to react. No defense is possible. You cannot hear it coming. You cannot run. And over time, as its population grew and its natural prey became scarce, the human being would have become its primary source of food. 600 years. That was what separated us from sharing the planet with it. But if number 5 seemed disturbing to you, wait for number 4, because this no longer comes from the sky. It comes from the ground, and across an entire continent, there was no escape. Number 4. In Australia, just 40,000 years ago, the largest predator on the planet was not a mammal, it was a lizard. It was called Megalania, or by its scientific name, Varanus priscus. And to understand its scale, you have to forget about any reptile that exists today. We are not talking about a big lizard. We are talking about a creature up to 7 meters long and weighing 600 kilograms, the largest lizard to ever walk the earth. But size wasn't the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was how it killed. The Megalania hunted in absolute silence. An animal weighing 600 kilograms moving through the Australian vegetation without emitting a single detectable sound. The first warning was the attack, and when it attacked, there was no second chance. Its jaws, equipped with serrated teeth backward like fish hooks, tore flesh with every shake of its head. It didn't bite and let go, it bit and ripped. And if the prey managed to escape, it was already doomed. Just like its modern relative, the Komodo dragon, the Megalania was very likely venomous. Its saliva contained a cocktail of toxins and bacteria. There was no small wound. Its teeth was a delayed death sentence. For the first humans who arrived in Australia, without metal tools, without defensive structures, without any prior knowledge of what inhabited that continent, encountering the Megalania wasn't a danger, it was an execution. Scientists debate to this day whether it was the human arrival that caused its extinction, or if it was the climate changes of the era. But there is something that is not up for debate. It was on the verge of surviving much longer than it did. And if it had, Australia would not be the continent we know today. A living Megalania in modern Australia would mean a predator with no natural rival, capable of ambushing large prey, impossible to detect before the attack, and with a bite that dooms you to death even if the victim manages to escape. The European colonization of the continent would have been a completely different story, or directly, it wouldn't have happened at all. Number 3. In prehistoric Europe, seeking shelter in a cave could be the last decision a human being would make in their life. It wasn't superstition, it was survival. Because at that time, the caves already had an owner. A predator that made the modern African lion look small. It was called Panthera leo-spelaea, the European cave lion. And although its name might sound familiar, it has nothing to do with the African lion we know today. It was 25% larger, heavier, more muscular, a predator that dominated the entire European continent, from the Iberian Peninsula to Siberia. On the walls of several European caves, early humans left detailed representations of the cave lion, not as a symbol of power or as a decorative figure, as a warning, as a record of something that terrified them enough to immortalize it in stone. As a predator, it was a perfect machine. It hunted in packs, coordinating attacks on prey much larger than itself, including young mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses. Its speed, mass, and capacity for group coordination made it an adversary against which primitive humans had few real options for survival. Fossil records show human bones with unmistakable marks from its teeth. It wasn't an occasional threat. It was a constant and systematic pressure on human populations in Europe for thousands of years. The cave lion went extinct approximately 13,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. The collapse of its natural prey and the expansion of human settlements finished it off. But it was incredibly close to surviving, so close that some scientists believe small, isolated populations could have persisted until just 10,000 years ago, when human agriculture was taking its first steps. If the cave lion had survived, the development of European civilization would have been radically different. A predator of that scale, which had already proven to actively compete with humans for territory and resources, hunting in packs with lethal coordination, would have severely limited the human capacity to establish stable settlements, to farm, to build. The history of Europe, and by extension the history of the modern world, might never have happened at all. But number 2 is different from everything before it, because this one didn't disappear in deep prehistory. This one was here, dangerously close. Number 2. 10,000 years ago, on the American continent, our ancestors were not the only ones hunting in the dark. There was something hunting them, sure. In silence, without warning, and with a precision that left no margin for error. Pause. It was called Smilodon, the so-called saber-tooth. And although its image is one of the most iconic of prehistory, the reality of what this animal was far surpasses any representation that has ever been seen. It wasn't an agile and fast feline like the modern cheetah. It was robust, muscular, built for one thing, to bring down large prey and kill them fast. It weighed up to 400 kilograms. Its fangs measured 28 centimeters, and they weren't simple decorative weapons. They were designed to find the exact spot between the cervical vertebrae of its prey and sever the spinal cord with surgical precision. An instant death. But what truly made it lethal wasn't its fangs, it was its hunting method. The Smilodon was a pure ambush predator. It didn't chase its prey, it waited for them, motionless, in absolute silence, for as long as necessary. And when it attacked, it did so from such a short distance that the prey had no time to process what was happening. For the first American humans, moving in small groups, hunting in open territories, and sleeping in precarious shelters, the Smilodon was a threat that could materialize at any moment, anywhere, without any warning. Fossil records confirm that the Smilodon and humans shared the same territory in America for thousands of years. They weren't distant neighbors, they were direct competitors. And on more than one occasion, the human being was the prey. The Smilodon went extinct approximately 10,000 years ago. The same causes as always: climate change, the collapse of its natural prey, and human expansion. But it was so close to surviving that some specimens were found in areas where human settlements were already an established reality. It didn't disappear before meeting us. It disappeared while living alongside us. A living Smilodon in the modern world would mean an ambush predator impossible to detect, operating in the dark, in territories that humans consider their own. There would be no way to anticipate its attack. There would be no way to defend oneself once it started. Human expansion across the American continent, the way it happened, simply would not have been possible. And yet, number one on this list makes the Smilodon look manageable, because what comes next didn't hide. It didn't need to. It was so big, so fast, and so lethal that it simply had no reason to conceal itself. Number 1. For thousands of years, there was a creature in North America that made it impossible to cross. It wasn't a wall, it wasn't an ocean, it was an animal, and everything that stood in its way simply disappeared. It was called Arctodus simus, the short-faced bear. And to say it was a bear is almost an insult to what this creature really was. It weighed up to 1,000 kilograms. Standing up, it reached 3.4 meters in height. It was the largest terrestrial carnivorous mammal to ever exist on Earth. But its most terrifying feature wasn't its size, it was its speed. The Arctodus simus could run at 60 kilometers per hour, an animal weighing a ton, moving at the speed of a car in an urban area. For any prey, that meant only one thing: there was no escape. It didn't matter the distance. It didn't matter the terrain. If the Arctodus decided to chase you, the chase was already over before it began. And unlike the Smilodon, which depended on the element of surprise, the Arctodus didn't need to hide. It didn't need ambushes. It didn't need strategy. Its size and speed were enough. It was the most dominant predator in its ecosystem by such a wide margin that no other creature posed a real threat to it. None except one: the human being. Paleoanthropologists believe that the Arctodus simus was one of the primary reasons why human migration towards South America took so long to happen. It wasn't just another predator along the way. It was a biological barrier, a living wall that for thousands of years kept our species contained, unable to advance toward the south of the continent. It went extinct approximately 11,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. The collapse of the megafauna that constituted its primary diet left it without sustenance. But just like the Smilodon, it disappeared while the human being was already there. Not before, during. It was a race, and by a very narrow margin, we won. If the Arctodus simus had survived, North America would be a radically different continent. A predator of that scale, with no natural rival, capable of catching any prey in any terrain, would have kept our species in a constant struggle for survival within the continent. Stable human settlements would have been almost impossible, agriculture unthinkable. And the passage towards South America, which allowed human expansion toward the rest of the American continent, would have remained blocked indefinitely by a barrier that no primitive tool could overcome. And what is most unsettling is not that it existed. What is most unsettling is how close it came to still being here. Ground Zero. Millions of years ago, in what is now the Amazon, there existed a creature that made the modern crocodile look like a harmless lizard. 15 meters in length, 8,000 kilograms in weight, the most powerful bite ever recorded in a vertebrate in the entire history of the Earth. It was called Purussaurus brasiliensis, a crocodile that inhabited the Proto-Amazon in what is today South America. It didn't hunt fish, it hunted whatever came within its reach. Primitive whales, giant turtles, any creature that had the misfortune of approaching the water. A bite force so brutal that scientists calculated could crush bone as if it were paper. The Purussaurus went extinct approximately 8 million years ago, not because of a predator, not because of humans, but because the Andes began to rise. Tectonic movements radically transformed the massive wetlands and swamps where it lived, eliminating the large prey it depended on. And an animal that needed more than 40 kilograms of meat daily to survive has no margin for error when its ecosystem collapses. Fortunately for us, geology did the work, because if the Andes hadn't risen, it is very likely that the Purussaurus would still be in those rivers today. And the history of humanity in South America would have been, quite simply, impossible. Long pause. If the Purussaurus had survived to our era, the concept of a river, of fresh water, of river navigation, simply wouldn't exist. No human civilization would have developed near a body of water inhabited by this creature. And given that practically all the great civilizations in history were born next to a river, the consequences are difficult to calculate. That is why it's not in the main top list. It wasn't close to reaching us, but its brutality is so absolute that it would be unforgivable not to mention it.